back is a dog. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is Tyrone McClendon, 1/3 of the Spoiled Radio, and you guys are now tuned into another episode of the Snooze Button Specials, the interview series where I sit down with the creative people around Atlanta and get their background information on how they did the things about how they did them when they did them on the thing. Still haven't got that intro down pack, but how are you all doing this Friday morning? Or whenever you're listening to this, I hope things are all well. I know we've been consistently inconsistent with uploads, BC before Corona, or AC after Corona. And mostly just because it's been hard just to get people to, because I don't really personally like the over the phone interviews, but sometimes you have to sacrifice for that. And, I'm not really meeting new people because I'm not going out and all these new things, but I'm trying my way to work my ways around the interwebs and the social medias and just dry emailing or cold emailing and DMing people, and just hoping they respond. And that's kind of how things have been, and that's actually what we have an example of today. Let's see, before I get into my guest, not really any housekeeping things that I would say. I will say that I do have a website that's in construction right now, and that website will kind of just be a host of where, all of the podcasts and everything will still be on SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, but now you will probably be able to, I'll have a website where I'll just have basically all of my snooze buttons posted, or at least all of them up to a certain point. Then I'm probably going to start putting my photos on there, and then just maybe showcasing all the other work I've done, like with Reach TV, journalism classes in school, and all that fun stuff. So be on the lookout for that. That'll be coming soon. I don't know. Hopefully, I'm going to try to get some other podcasts going. Hopefully, do a movie podcast soon because there are some good movies coming out. So hopefully, we'll be able to do something with that. I have started streaming on Twitch. I haven't got a consistent schedule down, but be sure to come on by and give us a follow, give us a subscribe so you can see us when we do go live. Normally, we'll be playing some FIFA or really whatever game I feel like playing, but come look at us on twitch.tv/eastnotwest44 if you ever want to come by and just hang out. That's enough about me. My guest today is a very special guest, like all my guests normally are. My guest today is one Mr. Wiley from Atlanta. Wiley is I almost don't even want to pigeonhole him into a genre, but I'll just say an alternative artist from Atlanta. He has been known to be associated with the likes of Kenny Mason, David the Tragic, Jelani, Jay Newton, really just another figure within this Atlanta creative scene, and one who's just kind of been adjacent to everything that I've been doing and all the spaces that I've been in. So I figured, what a better time now, he's probably not doing anything, than to just hit him up, ask him if he wants to come down to Sandy Springs and just have a conversation. And that's what he did. And this is one of those beautiful podcasts where I don't know about you guys, but as a host or as a journalist or any of those things, I love it when I don't have to say anything. And that's not just because I don't want to say anything, but it's just because the person is just giving all the jewels and loading all the information, and I don't even have to ask. Like, it just comes. And this is one of those episodes. It's a conversation, but it's very much me just listening to Wiley give his perspective on things, telling me his story. We talk about, obviously how he got into music. We talk about his passing of his friend, Jared, and just the inspiration that he had on him, and not just him, but the scene as a whole in his time here. We talk about, being a white artist in a majority black dominated culture, and how he fits into that, and then how he has been internalizing working in a condition with Corona and protesting and police brutality and all these type of things. So it's just actually just a real conversation. I'm really thankful that Wiley came out on such random notice, and we made something happen. So that's enough about me. I'm gonna toss it to past me, and we're going to have a good one. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I introduce to you Wiley from Atlanta. Thank you. Oh, please. Thank you. You're too kind. Stop. Please. Okay, for real, stop. Wiley, how you doing, my man?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, I guess I should say Wiley from Atlanta because there's multiple, we have to distinguish which one you are. Wiley from Atlanta, how you doing, man?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing well. Did you dodge some rain on your way up here?
Yeah, I did get stuck in a pretty torrential downpour on the highway.
And it wouldn't be Atlanta if there wasn't any traffic.
Exactly.
Like
trying to dodge, massive potholes, cars sliding all over the place. I did find out my car does not do very well in the rain.
Okay,
so
well,
that's good to know.
Thank God you made it here.
Yeah.
Now the hard part is getting back.
Exactly.
We were talking a little bit before this, just like, obviously how the circumstances of the world right now have altered things. So just before we get into anything, just how have you been coping with everything going on? And even outside of Corona, just like with Black Lives Matter and just everything, how have you been internalizing all of that?
I think that it's interesting that COVID kind of coincided. Well, I guess it was a couple months before George Floyd's death, which of course, not the first, won't be the last, but was a particularly incendiary incident, especially because of the actual video, which was, obviously, it's not something that's as easy for people who choose to not believe in white privilege and in profiling and in the treatment of black and brown people by police. It's easier for them to turn a blind eye when there's not an 8-minute video of someone being murdered in that way. Which all that is to say, I think with COVID kind of coinciding with that and everybody being at home, it really triggered, nobody could say like, oh, I don't even know what is that? You know what I mean? Everybody's watching the same thing. We all watched Tiger King at the beginning of the year, whatever, So I think in terms of that, it was definitely a beautiful thing to see, just to see the widespread response, everyone's tired of it, and genuinely people are tired of it. And I think that the response showed that, the protesting showed that. Obviously, as with everything, there's a news cycle. Breonna Taylor's murderers have not been arrested. It's not an easy problem to solve, so to speak. But I do think it's vitally important, especially for younger generations, even than our generation, for people to see people marching in the street and people standing up for this and like starting that conversation of, defunding the police and like actually really understanding what the police are. And like one of the most important distinctions that I saw early on is like police are hired to protect property, not to protect people. I think that as kids, especially as white kids, we have this like perception that police are like saving us somehow, or like they're there to protect us. But, I think most people, as they grow up, that perception changes. You get pulled over for going 10 miles an hour over the speed limit or whatever it is, get a ticket for it, et cetera, et cetera. You start to understand that the police are like a power system that really kind of goes unchecked. And especially with like, not to get into all of this, but the list does kind of go on, with the ways in which the police are protected against being convicted for the things that they do. They get to carry weapons. They don't seem to have any restrictions on, or punishments for using their weapons. And, I think it's very important for everyone to understand the injustices that are committed by the police, because I think that's the only way for progress, is for not only us, but for, kids growing up right now, our kids in the future, whatever it is, to have that different perception from a very early age, so that maybe something can be done about it. And I know I kind of meandered away from the original question, but all of that is to say, with this sort of crazy year, one thing that I saw a lot was like, oh, I wish things would just go back to normal or whatever. And it's sort of become a cliche now to say like, it's not going to go back to normal. But I do think it's important people understand that we don't want to go back to normal. Normal is why the situation is so bad, you know? And so I think hopefully Americans in the future will be more precautious, will wear masks if they have symptoms in public, you know, just things like that with public health. I think it's important to raise that awareness for all things. And yeah, I mean, obviously for me personally, like COVID and quarantine, et cetera, did like throw a wrench in kind of our plans for the year. But, and I've seen this from some people too, it's like, it's not that it's a blessing in disguise. It's not a blessing. People are dying. But for those of us who are fortunate enough to, you know, have passive income, especially like artists and musicians who may be at least making some money off of merch or streaming, whatever the case may be, we're very fortunate to have that kind of passive income and to be able to take time to just like focus on creating without outside distractions. I think that would be the one positive thing out of all of this, especially for people who are, you know, ambitious and creative. And it's not like I thought that everybody having to go home and like spend a lot of time alone and isolated or whatever was inherently good. It's just that I think, especially for those of us that make music and art and things like that, it was kind of an important moment to take a step back and like strategize and think about, you know, what we're going to do in the next year, especially because who knows when we can perform again. And for artists, especially an artist like me, performing is like 90% of how people even find out about me, you know? So I think this is definitely teaching everybody sort of a lesson, you know? And in that way, you can view it as a positive, if you're going to take any positive from what has been such a negative situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to J. Cole, because that was a little too deep for the intro. But
yeah,
I mean, I like it though. I like it. But I kind of like though that you did like, you know, meander off and, you know, say what you had to say, because I think in that is your answer as well. It kind of encompasses what you said, that, you know, with everything going on, everybody's had time to, you know, because like you said, this isn't the first time any of this had happened, and it probably won't be the last. But with the world kind of coming to this standstill, you know, one of my favorite, you ever seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
Yeah, of course.
You know, at the end of the movie, he's like, you know, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around every once in a while, you could miss it.
Right.
And I think that this was that moment for everybody to just stop and really look back and like, you know, because there wasn't, oh, well, I got to go back to work. I can't go out and protest because I got to go to work tomorrow, or I got to take the kids to school. None of that. You can't, there is no excuse, you know?
Yeah.
So I very much can tell that from that you've had time to sit and really like think about what this means and where do I fall into this and what can I do in the future to do this, that, and this. And I think that's, like you said, I think that's one of the most important parts of it. Because I think part of and I hate blaming things on social media because I kind of feel like people use that as an out nowadays. But one of the side effects, I would say, of social media is like how you say that news cycle. Things move fast. So we're not used to sitting on something and really being able to digest it and really think about what it means and critically think about it. So I think that, like you said, that's the blessing in disguise, that we've been able to introspect, I think, as a society. And hopefully we can look at this and learn from it and gain and take and actually apply these things and not just say that happened.
Right.
But only time will tell. But
yeah,
enough of all that. That's the topical part of everything.
Yeah.
First of all, once again, I want to thank you for coming out here. You know, you are, I don't know how to describe it because I have my personal, like, favorites of people who I see who are coming out of the scene. I love the Kenny Masons, the Jelanis, the David, the Tragics, and all these. But you fit into that mold, but you fit it in such a different way because, for one, I wouldn't even describe what you do as traditional hip hop. But then again, what even is that today?
Right.
But I see you, though. I've seen you on a lot of songs. A lot of people who I've met, Jay Newton, Kenny Mason, and David, and all those guys. So naturally, your name just came out amongst the myths, and you have this very unique thing to you. I wish I could verbalize it, but it's almost like with this like grungy Nirvana type sound, grungy thing going to it, but then it's also like this soulful type of whatever. And I was trying my hardest not to go into trying to describe music, but just gotta set the scene for people. So Wiley from Atlanta, though, one of the things though I'm always excited about, though, I love the music and all those things, but I'm always excited in the story and the how and how we got to where we are and things like that. So with that, we have to go all the way from the beginning.
Yeah.
And typically I would ask, where are you from? But I feel like it's kind of self-explanatory in this one. But I think what people don't know, a little known fact about you, is that your full name is actually Wiley from Atlanta by way of Clarkston.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't fit into the...
yeah, it's a little wordy.
I think it would be hard to see that on a festival bill or something. But I have lived in a couple different parts of Atlanta. Like you mentioned, Clarkston, for probably the majority of my childhood into adolescence. So like from when I was like 4 to when I was about 15, we lived in Clarkston. I grew up over there, and my family moved like right over by, they moved sort of like to the border of Decatur and Tucker, but I lived in Clarkston for a long time. It's like a really interesting area, especially because it's kind of in between everything. Like not everything, but you go this way, you get to Avondale Estates. You go this way, you get to downtown Decatur. It's like, and also, when I was little, we lived like in Decatur, like in Eastlake. And I can't exactly think of like where the street was because I was like 3 years old. But I think growing up in and around Atlanta really not only informs like my inspirations and like my music itself, but really, when I was like 15 and trying to think of a stage name, like I think I wanted to put Atlanta in my name because one of the key things I was focused on from a very early stage was like, especially because at the time, like all I wanted to do was be a rapper. And it's like, if you're going to me, if you want to rap, write rap songs, etc., there's a level of authenticity that is not necessarily present in other genres where it's like, I just don't feel comfortable with people like rapping about what they don't know about. Obviously, in music, people can interpret lyrics and things like that all they want. But from a very early age, I was like, I'm going to be writing rap songs based on stuff that I've lived through, because nobody's going to believe me. If not, I don't want to, lie on my songs. And it just comes across as corny to me, especially if you're like white and you rap and you're lying about like what you do or like what you've done. That just feels like very uncomfortable to me in general. And I felt like there was no better way to kind of embrace who I was than like putting Atlanta in my name and really trying to kind of represent Atlanta, at least from my perspective, like as best I could. Especially because I have a lot of pride for Atlanta, for being from here. It's it's kind of like a rare thing to be from here. I didn't realize that till I like went to Georgia State, and everybody was like, "I'm from New York."
Yeah. No, I realized that. I went to places, and when you leave the city and people say I'm from Atlanta, and you say, "Oh, what part?"
Exactly, and they're like, Loganville, bro. Yeah, so I definitely think like it's something that was always important to me.
So it's almost like Wiley from Atlanta is not just your name or your stage name. It's a statement in itself of that.
Yeah.
This is who I am, and this is what my content is about. It's like me and where I'm from.
Yeah, I'm especially drawn to. I think Donald Glover's show captures this pretty well. Just the sense of like Atlanta is, first of all, so spread out that like you can know people from like, east side, west side, southwest, whatever it is, but you will still run into them. So it's like you get all these little kind of different parts that are so different from one another and kind of unique. And there's also this like kind of mysterious quality to Atlanta, and it might just be because there's so many trees like throughout the city, and this is kind of what I meant by like Donald Glover's show capturing it. It's almost that like David Lynchian concept of like you've got sort of suburbs, but there's like something that kind of is underneath it that's like a little different, and I think without being from here, like you don't really get it, but there's a lot of moments in that show where I'm, you just find yourself feeling like that's such a thing that would happen, in Atlanta, even if it's like a fantastical thing in the show, it feels very like close to home. I mean, the pilot of that show, the news is like shooting in DeKalb County today or whatever. And it's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Just like being from DeKalb County and whatever, it's just cool. But I think, I'm fascinated by the city itself and like the culture of it and the history of it. And personally, my own personal beliefs that like Atlanta hip hop, it just doesn't get any better, than Atlanta hip hop. I mean, almost all my favorite rappers are from here. Some of my favorite artists in the world. I mean, people don't even know that John Mayer is from here, which is just to say, like, there's such a wide range, I think, of sounds that come from Atlanta. And it's really easy if you live outside of Atlanta to associate it, like, with one idea. And it was really weird. Like, when we went to South by years ago, and people would ask me, like, who's your favorite rapper? And I'd be like, Andre 3000, or I'd be like, Outkast, Big Boy. Both of those artists, like the name just did not register for people. Outkast, people will be like, oh, okay. But if you're like Andre 3000 or Big Boy, they're like, who? And I was shocked by that. If somebody in Atlanta says who, that's like, they're not from here. You know what I mean? Like, that's just a weird thing to not know. But outside of Atlanta, I don't think it's as common for, I think a lot of people, the general idea is like, oh, Atlanta's like radio music, like that's all the rappers that are like on the radio. And then you got like the West Coast and Chicago and New York. That's where all the lyricists are. And it's not true, So that's just my sort of perspective on the city and like its reputation, which kind of goes into this like really weird phenomenon. It's kind of different now that like Roddy Ricch exists.
Yeah.
Because he is incorporating like a very Atlanta. Wait, no, I'm wrong. Roddy Ricch proves my point somewhat.
Okay.
Which is, for some reason, anybody who raps from any other city can borrow the Atlanta sound whenever they want and not be criticized or like called out. But if an Atlanta rapper makes like some boom bap New York shit or like some West Coast G-funk shit, everybody's like, what is this? Like, and it's not like it's not like that's a problem or anything. I just find it weird, if an artist from LA or Chicago, if they want to borrow that, what they interpret as the Atlanta sound or like borrow elements of like Future or Thug or whatever it is, they totally get a pass. But I feel like there's so much more like, and maybe it's just because New York and LA have historically been so like.
Yeah. I was going to say, if I had to come up with a logical explanation for that, it would be something to the effect that, think of it as we are the providers of this culture. So when they take from us, it's expected because it's like, you guys are the ones doing it. Right. But when we do the G-Funk, the boom bap, or the drill or whatever, right, it's like, damn, Atlanta, I thought you guys like had your own thing. Like, why are you trying to be this other thing? Like, just be y'all. If I had to come up with an explanation, I don't really know. Sense. Yeah. I don't really know. But I wanted to touch on something that you brought up, and I was actually going to bring it up like way later on in the view, but you said it. So you mentioned about being a white guy in this space. And now obviously I'm a fan of you and I know about you, and obviously the people in this community, in this scene, know about you. But from an outsider's perspective looking in, you're just some white guy who makes hip hop music. Right. And that label can come with a lot of baggage. How do you combat that, or how do you go about navigating this industry with that stigma?
So I have a lot of kind of thoughts about this, but I'll try to kind of zero in on. So first of all, I'll circle it back to saying authenticity is like extremely important. I think, you look at sort of who's, I don't know, because I don't know if I want to like, so basically I'll put it like this. Okay. White rappers are allowed to exist like in hip hop, to me, if they are genuine, authentic, they are in pursuit of art and making good art. And also, if you can rap, you can rap, so there's that. But I think you can kind of look at Post Malone and Mac Miller, right? Post Malone puts out one song that is like a bold-faced appropriation statement in a way, right? I mean, it's called White Iverson. He's wearing a grill. He's got cornrows. It's very overt. Right. Right. So then you have Mac Miller, who comes into hip hop doing a very kind of like, it's not pop, but it's like, I call it like frat rap,
Okay,
it's like,
I like that.
There's a few artists that kind of fit in that lane, like Asher Roth.
Exactly what I was thinking of.
King of it, know, and obviously he makes different stuff now, but that was kind of the energy. And Mac Miller spent his whole career pursuing the art and like learning instruments and trying to understand R&B, and like, he was a huge, like, he listened to everything and was like, I want to be the best. I want to study this. He put out like, 6 albums, 5 mixtapes, 5 EPs, like in such a short period of time, where he's just like trying to evolve, blah, blah, blah. Post Malone becomes a superstar overnight, goes on tour with Justin Bieber, whatever. Of course, Post Malone is not making hip hop. Anybody could have predicted this dude's not going to be making hip hop his whole career. He was very open in that first Breakfast Club interview of like, I don't know, I like country music. You know what I'm saying? Like, so now that Post Malone makes like pop and kind of country, and like there's elements of hip hop in there, and he'll work with like Travis Scott and whatever. But now everybody's like, oh, fuck you, Post Malone. Like, you just use hip hop to get a leg up. And it's like, yes, but also Post Malone is like created by, I guess it's like Post Malone in sort of the arc of his career maybe never wanted to make hip hop. He just, and this is not like defending White Iverson in any way, it's just saying he broke through with that song and has been running from it ever since, right? His music has sounded nothing like it. Every new album, it's more pop, more, his debut album was barely, you could not really quantify that as a rap album, although it had rap drums and things like that. Mac Miller, on the other hand, was just a genuinely good dude. And I'm not saying Post Malone's not. Good dude, took his craft seriously, worked with any and everyone, produced for people. I think he really immersed himself in not only the music, but in the culture. So I make that comparison just to say that being a white rapper is only like a thing if you make it a thing. We're trying to be artists, right? So if I am like some weird like white dude who's like super conscious of the fact that he's white all the time, you know, and is like, oh, I'm a white rapper, whatever, like, shit is lame. I mean, think about it, bro. Look at all the white rappers that have like been successful. They kind of go one of two ways. Either they lean full tilt into pop, or their bit gets stale and they get corny. Mac Miller's the only one that maintained his authenticity, maintained his like ability to evolve and make kind of different sounding records. And like, he was always chasing that, like, you know, this will be my best album kind of energy. And I think, and that sort of goes back to what you're saying with like being a white rapper, and, you know, there's like, I think you said baggage that comes with it and things like that. It's like, bro, like, people, you know, I've never felt like being a white rapper gave me a disadvantage. I think that's like a super weird thing for someone to think. You know what I'm saying? Like, on the other hand, being a white rapper means that like sorority kids and like, you know, white like kids, white consumers or whatever. I mean, that's why I bring up the Post Malone example. It's like Macklemore, you know what I'm saying? Like, white people have this tendency to be like, ooh, we got one when a white rapper gets successful. Right. You know what I'm saying? It's like they really want to ride for them because they're white. And like, that's kind of gross to me. I think I've always just wanted to be an artist. I've always wanted to be a performer. I've always wanted to make music. And you can't like choose your fans. Right. You know, but I do think it's your responsibility as that artist to be aware of your platform and like what you may represent to some people. And it's your choice. If you want to sell out and like, and I don't necessarily mean sell out like in a bad way, but it's like, if you just want to get your pop money and retire to a house in the hills and whatever, like, do your thing. You know what I'm saying? But if you can both understand that you're going to have criticism because you're white, and also that it might even give you an advantage from like a pop sense just because of people's impressions of like what it means, I think it's just, you got to handle that shit yourself, you know, like, be who you are. Don't be fake. I've encountered many white rappers in my life, like in the scene, outside of the scene, whatever. I think it's fucking weird that all of them think that I'm gonna like want to be their friend just because they're also a white rapper, if that makes sense. Like, all I care about is if your music is good. Yeah. And if I think you're a genuine person and like you give your all, I've always said this about Atlanta. We will let anybody perform up on stage. You can do your thing. If we don't like it, we're not going to gas you up. You know, we don't care if it's like not polished or like not good, quote unquote. We just care that you are bringing the effort, bringing the intensity, bringing the authenticity to it.
Yes, you. Well, first of all, I like how you answer questions, and it very speaks to how you like are as an artist. Like, you answer questions conceptually as well. But you remind me of a conversation I had with another fellow podcaster, Seven, and you know, we were getting on the conversation of, you know, white rappers or white people in the hip hop space and things like that. But one of the things that we were talking about, and you kind of mentioned this, is that hip hop isn't necessarily just music. It's not, you know, rapping. That's not just what hip hop is. I went on to say that I would call hip hop a mentality. You know, it's the do-it-yourself thing. It's like you say, it's the, even though you're not polished, it's the fact that you're up here still anyway, feeling it out, learning what works, what doesn't work, and then going back to the lab and making it work. Like, that's hip hop. Like, from the roots, build it up, and then make it work. But I very much like how you answered that, though. I think you got that point across, and you know, it's good that you have this self-awareness and understanding early on, because, you know, like, some white rappers don't get that reality check until the cameras are on them or until a million eyes are on them, and people are like, nah, that ain't it.
It's like Macklemore texting Kendrick. You know? It's like, bro, like, we all know.
Yeah.
It'd be one thing if he texted him. It's another thing entirely to post a screenshot of that text on Instagram, because at that point you're just like, no, you guys, I'm cool, I swear, you know, or whatever. It just comes across weird. I don't fucking know that dude. You know what I'm saying? And frankly, I don't think Kendrick really gave a fuck.
Right.
Kendrick Lamar is probably the best rapper, at least of my generation. You know what I'm saying? Of the last decade, whatever. Right. And one of the best artists in a long time. Kendrick is very aware of himself. He's also aware of the fact that the Grammys are largely full of shit. So, you know, and yeah, that just speaks to what you're saying. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no,
yeah.
It's great. So, growing up.
Yeah.
Who all did you grow up with? Who all was in the house?
I grew up with a little brother, a little sister. I mean, she was born when I was like 8. Both my parents have been married for, I should probably know, but a long time.
So I'm always interested, because I'm an only child, so I'm always interested in the sibling dynamics.
Yeah.
And you being, it sounds like you're the oldest.
Yeah.
What is that like? Does that, do you have an extra pressure, responsibility you feel like, or?
I mean, I definitely feel like being the oldest, maybe not everyone feels this way, but I feel like being the oldest, like, forces you to act like a third parent a lot of the time, just because, you know, having younger siblings, like, they are probably not going to see you as like just their friend, especially like the age gap between all three of us is 4 years. So it's like, I'm in college, brother's starting high school, he goes to college, sister's starting high school. Now that he's in college and she's in high school, not that we don't hang out, but they have their own lives. They have peers, you know, like they're getting into stuff that I was doing 4 years ago. I mean, not specifically, but you know, so with all that, it's just like, you know, my sister is like, oh, like, I want to go to whatever, I want to like go on a trip to the lake or whatever. Can you be my like chaperone so mom and dad don't have to come? It's like, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying? Like, no, if I'm going, I just want to hang out. And if I do go, then I have to be responsible for you. That's the only thing to me. Like, I don't think being the oldest necessarily has ever felt like pressure to me, except for that like weird kind of the way it sort of affects your dynamic with your siblings. Cause like you're sort of forced to like act like a parent in some scenarios, which kind of sucks. But hopefully it'll even out when I'm like 30. My siblings will be like, you know what, you were probably right. But we'll see.
Yeah, like I said, I'm always interested in how these things, like I don't know. I just never had a brother or sister, so I never know. So, what about? We're gonna get into dad in a second, but what about mom? What was she like?
Yeah, my mom is great. She's very nice. She's very smart. Works really hard, is very organized, both qualities that I don't, well, I would say I work hard, but not at work, you know. She's very organized and I'm not. Both my parents work at Emory. My mom's worked at Emory since I was very, very little. And they both met in college. And my dad was my mom's first boyfriend ever, I think.
Fun fact.
Yeah, and they got married, so good
did
for her.
Didn't even have any musical background or anything? Or
yeah, I probably should have mentioned. Yeah, my parents met in choir in college. They were both in choir. They were on like the national touring choir or whatever, and then they've been in church choir since I can remember. We did choir. You know, they had the kids do it growing up. My dad was in multiple bands. He was a singer-songwriter. He played guitar. He can play like most instruments.
Right. I was going to get into him. It seems like he's a very pivotal part in your musical spark.
Yeah, especially, well, it's interesting because, like I've said before, I kind of grew up going to see my dad perform. Oftentimes my mom would accompany him on vocals, and, you know, he had like various iterations of his own kind of original music. And I've said before, like, growing up, I never like went to those shows and thought, oh boy, like I want to be a singer-songwriter or like a folk artist, or, you know, I don't know exactly how I'd quantify his music, but somewhere kind of in that ballpark.
You were just like, I'm at my dad's job.
Yeah, like you know, he would all like he's a software developer and like stuff like that, and so his day job, I'm assuming, was probably pretty boring, and so it was cool that he was able to gig as often as he was. Going to the gigs, I never felt like, oh boy, like I want to do this one day, but I did. You know, I was definitely like, I gravitated towards theater and like performing on stage.
Right. I was gonna get into that. We're skipping ahead, but I was gonna say, I know you got into like a theater camp essentially.
Yeah.
At Georgia Tech.
Yes.
Early on.
Yeah. If anybody's ever gone to drama camp at Georgia Tech, you know, my parents would pretty much just like try to find summer camps when I was little to get me away from them during the week. And like, I think I started going to drama camp when I was like 10 years old.
So would you say that's your like first love, is like the cinema theater type deal? Because you seem to have like, I mean, you have a somewhat of a good understanding of like, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like I said, conceptualizing and creating stories, and you know your directors. You know, you mentioned David Lynch and all these things, so you understand like looking at film as an art form and things like that. So would you say that's your first love?
I think it kind of comes down. I think it's like performing was my first love. Like, you know, when I was 10 at drama camp, I wrote a script, and like 10-year-olds weren't allowed to be in the playwriting class because we had to actually like put on the productions, and they were like, you know, no 10-year-old is going to write anything we want to perform. And this isn't like really an egotistical thing. I just was like, I really want to do that. I want to be in playwriting. That seems really cool. I had always like written stories in school and stuff. So I just wrote this like silly, like fake commercial about like shoes that can make you fly, but you have to like fill them up with applesauce, like all this weird shit. But it got like selected, and we performed it at the end of the summer, and like it was pretty funny, I guess. Like it's kind of a hazy memory because I was 11. But having an audience full of people in a theater like laughing at not only me on stage but something that I wrote, especially as a kid, I was like, yo, this is crazy.
Sticks with you.
It was a whole different rush, you know, and it really made me feel like, damn, I really want to perform. And so just that coinciding with me like getting a little older, going to middle school, and then suddenly like discovering hip hop, because my dad had always played music. I'd always liked music growing up, but I feel like middle school was when I was like, I found the music that I really feel connected to. You know, I was like so into Lil Wayne and Jay-Z and Eminem and Kanye and like Drake. It's weird to think about a time when Drake like wasn't Drake necessarily, but like, you know, when I was in middle school, that's when like these guys were kind of popping. And then I went to high school, and it was like, I still think of it as like a second golden age of hip hop.
Yeah, I was going to say, me and you have this, I read this, and we both have a special relation with the same period in time in hip hop.
Yeah.
It's that summer of 2013.
Yeah.
When Born
Crazy.
Sinner came out.
Watching movies
of this. Yeezus came out the same year, and then there's something else that came out that year too. Oh, yeah. Jay-Z, Magna Carta, Holy Grail. Even though that wasn't one of Jay-Z's best albums, but whenever Jay-Z drops, it's an event.
Right. And I think Doris came out like the year before.
It might have been right after. I think
it might have been after. But like it was in that. But
yeah, it was in that same.
And Before the Money was like right before.
Yes. It was, and I credit that year, or especially that summer, that time period, is when I really started I don't even know. It's almost like an awakening. Almost.
It felt like they were talking to you, right? Or like saying sort of stuff that you felt like it was like listening to like Kanye and shit for our generation. It's not like, I feel like it's a little different than like actually having rappers that like you feel like you're kind of growing up with them.
Right. Because I would say like, you know, because when were you born?
1997.
Okay. So we were born in the same year. So, you know, when that year 2013, and I almost wanted to write something. I say like this 2010 2010s that just passed this decade, it's very impactful for our generation because it's the first decade or generation or time period where not only did we live through it all, but we also understood the context of what came before and what came after. Because the 2000s, we don't really know the 90s. We weren't really there for that. But the 2010s, we understood what led up to that. So listening to a J. Cole or a Mac Miller or a whatever the 2013 version of Kanye West was, it made sense. Like you said, it spoke to you because you saw them. Like you saw J. Cole and Mac Miller's rise and climb and things like that. So yeah, I don't know. Never really thought about why that specific summer just clicked, but
I feel like it's because it coincided with, Acid Rap came out close to them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think, Childish Gambino was kind of like,
I think Royalty came out that year, that mixtape.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just this interesting, it was like old music industry was colliding with, we were sort of getting a glimpse of like what it was going to become. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time that it was like, you can just put stuff on SoundCloud. Yeah. There's an open forum for where you can be like, here's my music, and that had never really existed before. And I think it was just the kind of that like DIY element, like feeling, it's weird to look back on, but it's like, I remember, listening to Chance the Rapper and then like you go through and like you look at all the features on Acid Rap and you're like, I need to check these guys out.
Yes.
Like if you don't know who they are.
It's so crazy. I go back and listen to, what is it? The Childish Gambino mixtape Royalty. Yeah. And at the time I didn't know anybody on that mixtape. And I go back now and I'm like, dude, fucking Chance is on it. Absol, Schoolboy Q, like Nipsey Hussle's on it.
Nipsey Hussle's
and
on
I'm
it.
Like,
it's insane.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, I like to think, like how you talking about it was like that bridging of the old and the new. I feel like we're at that same part in the cycle again. Yeah. You could argue it happens every maybe 3 or 4 years where there's like a new like wave class of people who come in. I would say the last one was probably the 2016, 2017, we had the Lil Yachty's, the Uzis, the Cardis, and all of them.
It's funny you mentioned those three because everybody else, where are they now? Yachty, Uzi, and Cardi, to me, still fully relevant. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you listened to Yachty's last project he put out, but like some great fucking songs on there. Yeah. Like, Uzi and Cardi have played their careers really smart, and they were really like the face of that sort of new wave. Yes. And all the guys that were just kind of like peripheral members have just flamed out, in one way or another. Now, obviously saying all the guys is like super general, but a lot of those people just aren't that exciting anymore. And I think it speaks to, it's like you were saying, you get that kind of in between, like old going into new and everything. Like we went from this crazy like lyrical moment where when we were in high school, all the like stuff that excited, at least for me, I'm like, wait, what'd he say? Like all the intricate lyricism was so interesting and so exciting. Mm-hmm. And then my brother's high school generation is like, we got in this huge argument because he, To Pimp a Butterfly had come out, and then like Malibu came out, and like these albums that I really gravitated towards and was really into. And then he's listening to like Famous Dex and whatever, and like that's not to shit on that at all. All of that music was like of the time and like has value, etc. But we would get in fights because he'd be like, just because I don't want to listen to Kendrick Lamar go like, for 5 minutes doesn't mean I don't understand music, you know? And of course, I was just like super old head, like, you don't understand, like you can't feel it properly or whatever. But he's a kid, I think music is always going to speak to like kids that are in high school when it comes out, because like that's when we really start diving into music and like developing our taste and figuring out the shit we like.
And I've also learned through life is that some people listen to music, or a lot of people listen to music differently. People like us, people who are actually into the art and the stories and everything around it, we listen to different things. But then there are some people who I'm just trying to have a good time, like I'm just trying to turn something on and just snap my fingers to it. I'm not really, because I get like that sometimes, and I tell people, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what was it when the whole fuck J. Cole hashtag was a thing? Granted, part of it was troll, like, it wasn't real, but there was an actual vocal community out there who was like, I'm not trying to listen to some dude talk about folding clothes.
Right.
I'm not trying to da 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 da. And it's like, what? You know?
Yeah.
But it's funny that you say that, that was a time. I would make the argument that we're moving back towards lyricism now. It's slowly cycling back around to being full of bars. And I look at people like you, Kenny Mason, Suave, and Jay, like all those people. Like, it shows that it still can thrive. I think what the problem had been for the longest was that the people who could make lyrics and the people who could make hits weren't the same people for the longest time. But now I think we're having people who can do both.
Right.
So I think that's the time we're moving in. So about you though, so you mentioned middle school was the time you really started, catching on to hip hop.
Yeah.
What type of music were you listening to before that?
Like, not much, honestly. Like, genuinely, I grew up listening to what my dad listened to and what my mom liked. And, my mom would listen to Sade while she was like cleaning the house on Sunday. My dad would listen to the Allman Brothers, the Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix, Bob Dylan.
It's so funny
Arrested Development.
It's so funny you're naming all these names. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, yeah.
But I'm cutting you off.
Yeah.
It's so funny that you name all them because I can hear all of these influences in you today.
Thank you.
And it's crazy because I have this thing, like I'm almost taking joy in the thought of becoming a parent later on in life, so I can form my kids like music taste. Because
think about it all the time.
Yeah, because I'm always interested in who people's parents listen to, because that trickle down effect into what you end up like. Even when you do find your own music that you're like, even if you had gone into liking like hard headbanging metal music,
right,
and you started making music, I'd probably still hear those same influences. But
yeah, it's almost like a subconscious thing that influences you because you were so exposed to it. Like, my dad loves Paul Simon. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like, Paul Simon is not somebody that I would say like, oh, I'm inspired by him directly. But if you listen to his albums, like the experimentation on some of his records and like the stuff he's doing is almost like Kanye-esque, in a way that it's like, wow, music really transcends a lot of things, and like, I think that's one of the amazing things about it is that there's so much room in music for all different types of things. I also think it's really natural for people to like want to reject or hate what's new, just with everything. I mean, I still haven't downloaded TikTok and I'm like super grumpy old man about it.
It'll be gone by the time you get to it.
I heard about that. But yeah, I mean, and I realized, my little sister is like a sophomore in high school. She loves TikTok. And I'm like, yo, this app was made for her.
Yeah.
Like, if I ever watch them, I'm like, yeah, she would find that funny. Like.
And there were people probably like our age now, like when we were on Vine, who were probably looking at that like.
They're just like, this is so stupid.
Yeah.
What about YouTube? Yeah, exactly. So it's just interesting. And it's interesting that you say, first of all, that you can hear those influences in my music, because I do think the more I wrote songs and the more I like evolved as a writer and like came to understand my voice more, the more I could hear that in myself. But definitely it's an interesting thing because it was never like my intention to try to sound like that. But yeah, I mean, I do think that it's the fact that my parents didn't listen to rap music when I was growing up was like when I first started listening to it. I was like, where has this been my entire life?
Yeah.
Like I just literally felt like this is the music I've been waiting for. Like that's all I was putting on my iPod, like when I first got one, because I was just like, this shit is so cool and so different. And like for the first time, I was like, damn, I think I want to like be a rapper. And I had never thought I want to be in a band. Well, sometimes I thought that when I was little, like I want to be in a band, but like I started actually writing when I get into hip hop. I think just because there's something so, I've always, rappers, like sometimes it doesn't really feel like this anymore because I'm not 15 or whatever, but like when you're young, sometimes like rappers you look up to feel like superheroes, and they feel like these larger than life figures who are so like they just say what the fuck they want to say, and like the ability to rap and like to rap really well, like I think is so like ear grabbing and like exciting for me. And it's just an amazing genre because to me it doesn't ever really get stale. Like if people are riding the same flow too hard, it'll change, you know. And you look at like everybody borrowed the triplet flow after Migos really blew up, and then that went on for a while, and then now DaBaby and like Jetson, you know, like that kind of new wave has sort of changed the way people approach songs, and changed like the popular flow or however you want to call it. And now the other day I was volunteering and they were playing like pop radio all day, and almost every big pop song is using that like sort of that, you know,
trap drum
inspired, like that like Jetson type, you know, where it's like every song you're like, and that's where the DaBaby verse should go, you know. Like it's fascinating to me how pop music, especially now, is like so informed by hip hop. And also like, you know, I mean, I think Frank Ocean really like fucked the game up for, you know, people say like Frank Ocean brought the guitar back to R&B, like with Blonde, but I think he also really kind of challenged pop music to change.
Yeah, you have a very like you have a connection to Chanel, right?
Yeah. When I heard that song, I was like, holy shit. I don't know why that song, because it's not like I wasn't already a massive fan of Frank, but that song inspired me to write the song Champion, which when I initially wrote it, I just wrote it like as a poem, and I'd never really written a song that way before. So I think it was like, I was also in a really bad place when that song came out. So I think that coinciding with like feeling really shitty and then having this song just make me suddenly, I had writer's block for over a year, hadn't made any songs that I liked, and I was just sort of like, what am I doing? And then I wrote that song and I was like, oh my God, like I get it again. You know, like I feel like this is the best thing I've written and now I want to outdo it. And that's when I talk about Frank changing pop music and, you know, any of this kind of stuff. Frank writes about things that people just don't write about, you know, and I think that's part of what makes him so captivating. And his writing style is so cinematic. And I think that's beautiful. I think that informs a lot of what I do, because I've always felt like the best songs are songs you can kind of picture as you listen to them, at least in one way or another. I mean, that's kind of a generalization, but you know what I mean. You know, Outkast really...
You listen to ATLiens, it sounds like something from outer space.
Exactly. It's very, like, the imagery they use is really amazing. I was trying to remember this lyric that I heard the other day, but it was a Big Boy lyric but I can't remember it. But yeah, I mean, and that just ties into songwriting in general, like, and that's why I think it's changed a little bit.
So I want to ask you, since we're talking about, like, you know, creating in the process, I want to talk about a time in your life. I know our timeline's all over the place, but that just means the conversation is good.
Right.
But there was a time in your life when you were first starting to make music and the response wasn't the most positive.
Yeah, I would say it was like well-deserved that people shit on me, because
that's very real of you to say.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's just no way that I can be like, yeah, the first few songs I put out were good. Like, they were horrible.
Yeah.
And of course, I think it was partly because of SoundCloud. I was like so excited to just have an EP out that I just was like, here it is. And my dad, I've literally like told him now, I'm like, please, like, why did you let me put that out? But from his perspective, he did everything he could. He was like, are you sure you want this to come out? You know, you can take some time and really listen to it. And I think the wake up call of like all of my kind of peers and even like close friends just like trying their hardest not to talk about it, and like it was, I mean, this makes it sound like it was just the most garbage music ever released. It's just that it was, I had no idea what I was doing. It was so unfinished and so like half of an idea, and I had no idea how to write lyrics. I didn't know what my voice was going to sound like recorded, and like rapping, I was not rapping well, or at least all that well, you know. But I think it's like failing in that way, especially in high school where everybody's gonna like shit on you to your face, was really important, because I kind of learned, like, why am I gonna put out a song if I can't play it in a playlist with songs that I like and like not notice? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's a lot to do with like mixing and just like generally song structure and lyricism. But I think it was hard to think at the time of maybe I shouldn't put this out, because you're so excited to have created something that you're like, I just want people to hear it, you know? And I thought it was good when I put it out. It was like the next day that I realized what a mistake it was.
Well, I'm interested in like, I know some girl asked you this, why did you make this?
Yeah.
But I'm genuinely asking, like, you know, not just like, why did you do, but like, you know, obviously this isn't something you just do at home and you put out. Like, this is something you went to sleep, you woke up, did it again, lived your life, came back, worked on it again. Like, why?
Yeah. I think it was a combination of things. One was, it was like the first time in my life that I had something that I was like, I want to do this so bad. Like, I couldn't sleep at night because I was thinking about like performing and getting to go on tour and getting to record in big studios, and like the dream just really kind of gripped me in such a way that I never stopped to think maybe this is bad. You know, I also think it's because I've just always had the feeling of like, I know I can do music, I just have to keep working at it. It wasn't the kind of thing where like after it came out I was like, well, I guess I suck, you know. It was more like I was like, damn, all right, back to the drawing board, you know, like what did I do wrong? And I think it was a huge, like I said, wake up call, just with like, I just sort of realized, yo, you don't even list, like, I felt to myself like, you have all this music that you look up to, that you love, that you listen to. Why don't you incorporate your influences into your music? This shit that you put out, like the little EP that I put out, it just didn't even sound like the stuff that I liked. It wasn't like, I don't know how to describe it, but it was also kind of a weird place to be like that young and trying to put out like rap, because I knew, I don't know. It's just weird. It's like, I think once you kind of learn when you're trying to write lyrics and trying to write raps and stuff, that like there's so much more to it than just like fitting rhymes together. It makes a huge difference. And at the time I was just so impressed with myself that I was like rhyming shit together. I think the biggest criticism I got was like, you're trying to pack too many syllables and words into each bar.
You were trying to be a lyrical miracle.
Yeah,
spiritual.
of course. That's like, I'm like, I love lyrical stuff. Let me just really try to get intricate with this lyricism.
I feel like anybody who's like a big fan, for one, anybody who's ever like, who's a real fan, has tried to write a 16 once in your life. And like you say, it's in that moment when you realize, like, well, for one, you realize, like, damn, the dudes who are really good at this are, like, really good. Like, when you really try to put something together. Because in your head, you just, you know, you may listen to an Eminem and you'll just hear the I'm like, okay, all I need to do is have a flow. But then it's like, no, you listen again, and now he's, like, multi-syllable rhymes. And you're like, oh, well, I need that. Right. And then you're like, it just becomes overwhelming when you get to a certain point, and you're just like,
yeah, and it's hard to find your own voice through that. You don't even know what kind of music you want to make. Like, if you don't know what you want your sound to be, I think it's really hard to know what you want your sound to be unless you're like 25 and you've been making demos for like a decade and you're like, I got it, you know? Otherwise, you just have to keep going, you know, through the cycle. It's like, I always say, when you start off, all you're trying to do is be your influences. You're trying to emulate them so hard that sometimes you're copying them, you know, like imitating them. And then you get to a point where those influences just kind of become the backdrop for your thing, which is unique in and of itself if you find that thing, you know? And I think like, it's part of what makes our scene in Atlanta over the last, I mean, I would consider myself a part of this scene since like 2015. So in the last 5 years, you notice like it's not everybody's making different stuff. All the artists you mentioned, you know, like even if we frequently collaborate, we're all in different lanes. Beauregard and Kenny's music does not sound similar. David and Jelani's solo projects sound totally different, you know?
And they're on each other's stuff.
Right. And everybody has their own set of influences. Like David and I have talked about before how we sort of sound alike in our delivery, and we both think it's because we had the same influences. So we just kind of naturally like drifted towards that. Also, we're both like heavy smokers with like deeper voices naturally. But I've always thought that's really interesting too, you know, and what really breaks through when an artist like kind of like is on the come up or whatever it is that like unique voice delivery. It's like
the rapper voice is hella underrated.
Yeah, and it's super important. Like, it also can't be like a caricature of your voice or like an effect, because then you can't. It's like so obvious that shit isn't real. You know, that it's weird. And like I remember Andre 3000 said, I'm pretty sure this was recent. No, I was watching the documentary about like Goody Mob and like Dungeon Family, and Andre 3000 was saying that he might not have been saying it, but someone was saying about him, he really found his sound when he started rapping in like his speaking voice. He had always tried to have like a rapper voice, and then he just like one day rapped just how he talks, and they were like,
I've heard the story. Yeah,
that's it. You know what I mean? And sometimes that's what it takes. You think that you have to sound a certain way. When I first started rapping, I was like trying to make my voice all high pitched, you know,
You're trying
like,
to be like Lil Wayne.
Yeah, or like Wayne or like Chance. Like I thought that you had to have this almost like character voice. And I think it was probably around like 2016 when I put my first EP out that I was like moving in a new direction of like, what's my sound? You know, what does my voice sound like?
So when you were coming out of high school, what was on your mind as far as life after high school?
Yeah, I had no interest in going to college. I told my family multiple times I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to just work on music full time. And I was like, I'm going to be a musician for life. I'm going to be a performer. That's what I want to do. I don't want to go to college. My dad, I always like tease him about this now. He straight up was just like, it's never going to happen for you. And he wasn't saying it like you suck, or like, he was literally just like, dude, you might as well like go try out for the fucking Hawks, you know, for like as much chance as you have of being a like successful musician, because he had tried it. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously he had a family and it kind of disrupted the whole grind or whatever. But like, there was a time period where he was like, this is all I want to do. And, you know, I think him saying that to me, because he is like a supportive person, I think him saying that to me was really like I was just kind of like, nah, fuck you, I'm gonna do this shit, you know, like, and I had not really had that moment yet. I mean, high school is what it is. Like, people in high school are gonna roast you even if your shit is good. Like, it doesn't matter, you know. A lot of that is like jealousy, but a lot of it is like, you're probably bad because you're young and you don't know what you're doing. I feel like the rappers who get fucking successful in high school, I'm like, yo, I'm so thankful that I didn't, because who knows what my shit would sound like.
Yeah. Or who knows what you would be like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a lot of pressure.
Right. But so you didn't go to school at all?
Oh, sorry, I didn't even finish answering the question. I didn't want to go to college, but I did. Ultimately, I lost that fight. They were basically like, if you don't go to college, you can't stay here. So like, what are you gonna do? They always
hit you with that one.
I know. And I was like, damn. So yeah, I went to college. I met a good group of friends like that I was really close with, and I kind of felt like maybe I was like projecting this or something, but I just didn't feel like I fit in at the college. And like my roommate and I, you know, he's like a designer, he makes clothes. He's also a huge like hip hop fan and like music fan. And, you know, we would just like drive around campus, like smoking and like talking about how much it sucked going there. And it was just like really weird. It was Mercer in Macon. We both got like really good scholarships, so we both went. My parents met there, so I was like, this will be great. And just to like clarify, I actually loved the classes at Mercer. I thought like the teachers were great. The campus was cool. Like it was fine. It was just Julian and I both felt super like outliers somehow. And like another thing that was weird about Mercer was that like a huge majority of the black students that went to Mercer were like either athletes or they were in fraternities. So Julian was neither of those things, and yet oftentimes we would just be eating lunch and somebody would come over to Julian and be like, yo, what time's the basketball game? Like genuinely thinking he's on the team and shit. Like it was just very fucking weird. And like obviously when the Trump shit happened, there was like MAGA stuff everywhere, and we were like, dude, this sucks. Like even the people we feel close with, whom we love, like still now we're friends with them. But it just felt like we were somehow disconnected from this like common understanding of like college life. And so I just like texted him after, I think we went to that school. We went to Mercer for like a year and a half. And I texted him in like January and was like, dude, I'm dropping out. And he was like, bet. And he dropped out too.
So while you were at Mercer, though, were you still trying to make music?
Yeah. I mean, he was like my manager while I was going to Mercer, which we both agreed like wasn't really the move in the long term after the fact. But like at the time, yeah, I put out my first EP while I went there. I would record in my dorm room, like, and you know, he would just like critique the stuff I was making. I hit like a creative stride when I was going to Mercer, where I wrote and recorded like my song August, my song Paper Planes, half of like my Teen Spirit EP, all of my like Don't Talk to Me About Love EP or mixtape, which is like my first thing ever. It was like I felt almost like I was creating just to get away from going to school and like socializing and dealing with all that. And then when we went to Georgia State, we hung out a lot less because we stopped living together. We both started like living at home, but at least at Georgia State, we like felt comfortable. I think especially like growing up in Atlanta and then going to school outside of Atlanta, but still in Georgia, it's like a culture shock. Maybe not for everyone, but for me, I was like, this is so weird. You know, like I just felt uncomfortable. So I don't know, but yeah, I ended up dropping out of Georgia State too. I got we got asked to open for my friend Caleb Mitchell on tour, to be like one of two openers, and it was gonna be like the small tour, and I was like, dude, I'm fucking out of here. I'm about to go on tour, fuck school. And like I asked for incompletes, and my teachers were like, hell no, you don't even try in class. Like, you know, so I just dipped. And most of what I did at Georgia State anyway was take creative writing and film classes. So I was just like packing my schedule with like writing and film classes. And I still say to this day, I'm not saying that college is not valuable, because it definitely is, but it costs a shitload of money, and none of the connections that helped get me to where I am right now, like, I guess besides Julian, my roommate, I didn't meet any of them in college.
Yeah, I had this conversation with Benny, pop star Benny, and we were saying that what I was saying then I would recommend people, like you say, like college can be a good resource, but I would think the thing is you should learn or know how to use it, or know if you even need to use it.
Right.
Because I would say, like, if coming out of high school and you know what you want to do and you have a general idea of how to do it,
right,
you should just spend that time, like your 20s, just working towards that. Because then
absolutely, you
can turn 31 and then say, I can still just go to college.
Yeah, exactly. One of my best friends did not go to college. He's a self-taught designer, and he's done work for A3C, One Music Fest. He makes most of my flyers, merch, you know, cover art. He's just a fucking hard worker who taught himself how to do it.
I also think it's a perspective thing too, because I think like a common trend I see with a lot of like really successful artists or artists who are really on the grind, there's like, they have this moment where I would like to say where life punches them in the face.
Yeah.
Something to that effect, where where the lens opens up. Because I fault myself. I don't necessarily say I fault myself because it takes time. But, I was one of those people throughout high school and most of college. I didn't understand why people just didn't finish. College I can understand because, the cost and all that stuff. But, when people used to be in high school, be like, fuck school, I'm not with this, blah, 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 blah. I didn't get it because my life's framework only existed within school.
Right.
But then once I started, when I was getting ready to graduate, that last 2 years of school, I started going out and just seeing people, meeting artists who were far into their, I say this all the time, Playboi Carti went to my high school. So to see that and then meeting people like Kenny, who I, was seeing the pieces come together and things like that. By the time I got to graduation, I was like, why am I even here? What was all this for? I almost kind of felt like, I think jaded is the best word to use because my last semester of college, that last year, I just walked on campus and it felt like I was in the Twilight Zone because I was like, what is all, I already knew what I was trying to do. I already knew how to do it. I was already working towards it. I think I was 2 years deep into this.
Yeah.
And it was just in the way. I was like, I just want to be done with this so I don't even have to deal with that stress. Yeah. So I think there definitely is something to it where it's not for everybody. And I think that our generation is starting to be the ones who make that a little more apparent.
And I think our parents' generation, for the most part, was one of the first generations where it was expected for you to go to college on some levels. So their understanding is still you got to go to school, you got to finish all the school. And I just think we have so much more access. It's like you said, it doesn't mean that college is not valuable. It just means maybe it's not for everyone. It also means there is value in, my girlfriend and I talk about this because she went to Pratt in New York and got a degree, and she's very knowledgeable in the arts, and she makes all kinds of different art and understands things like Photoshop and graphic design on a different level. I'm just doing the eye test, that looks cool, and she's like, that's stupid. You know what I mean? Certain things like that, where she'll argue with me yes, you can learn things yourself, but unless you are supernaturally gifted, you still might not hold up to criticism unless you really, really work hard and learn all this stuff, because I'll say to her well, I want to direct and act, and she's like, well, have you ever taken a directing class? I'm like, no. She's like, okay, then you don't know how to do it. It's not her way of being you can't do it. She's just anything you want to be good at, you have to work at. You have to practice it. You can go to film school for 4 years and not be able to write and make a movie. You know what I'm saying?
Until you do it.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of value in just doing stuff. Would I have gone back in time and told my younger self, don't put this out, bro, just wait 2 years and then you'll put something out people will fuck with, Yeah, I would totally do that. But still, I'm glad I did put it out especially because now all the kids in high school that were like, fuck you, you suck, you're never going to do this professionally, are in my DMs being like, dude, honestly, your album was really cool. And it's sick to see you still out here doing it. I'm like, yeah, all right. It's hard not to get jaded by that stuff. I mean, I'm not saying I don't appreciate that, but it is fucking weird to have people who made fun of you and publicly roasted you and teased you for years and were always dicks to you, and then you'll see them on Edgewood or in East Atlanta Village, and they're like, dude, it's really cool that you're still trying to make music. I'm like, yeah, it's fucking cool that I'm still trying to make music. People just, I don't know. Everybody has their own path.
Yeah, and I would say to people who are still if you're wavering on going to school or not, I would say don't let school use you. Learn how to use school, because the things that I did gain from school, I'm very glad that I did, because I think it's the community and the network. I never would have met David and all of those guys had I not, known Jazz, and I only knew Jazz because I went to school with him. So it was I think that, like I said, I think you use school as a resource. You use it because even artists who aren't in college understand how valuable a college campus is to an artist. That's exposure. That's currency. All of those kids in there, that's a new head who never heard you, who'll go to his dorm room, play it out loud, and someone will be like, who's that?
Right.
Like, things spread fast on a college campus. So,
sure.
I don't know. Like I said, there are pros and cons, but as you said, everybody has their own path.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk to me. When did Jared Milton come into your life?
Yeah, so it's so strange. So Jared went to my high school, Druid Hills High School. He was 4 years older than me, so we didn't go to high school at the same time. He went to high school with Austin Weatherly, who has managed me off and on now for like 4 years. Four years, yeah. So when I'm going like kind of the long way through the story, but when Jared was in high school, he would make songs and write songs and sing, and he had grown up singing in choir, et cetera, et cetera. And he sent Austin like all this music he was working on. And I might be getting the story wrong. Obviously, Austin's not here to confirm it, but Austin just took it upon himself to mass email it to like everyone in their grade and was like, dude, check this out. People were like, damn, this stuff is like pretty good, you know? And Jared never would have put it out because he was very like reserved. And then they both went to school in New York, different schools, but still in New York. They stayed in touch. They kept, like, Austin kind of became his official manager, and Jared was, you know, writing songs. If you do a deep dive on his SoundCloud, he just has some crazy, like, incredible little things that he was even really early on that he was trying to do, especially because I think his influences were so wide ranging and strange. But, you know, he got some, like, I know that he got into a writing session for Rihanna, which was like crazy. I don't think they selected anything that he wrote, but it was like Frank Ocean's manager at one point reached out and was like, yo, these songs are really cool. You know, he had some little moments like that. And I think when they moved back to Atlanta, and Jared he'd started working with this guy, Ivano, who you would know as Oliver Blue. He produced my last album along with our friend Malik. And Ivano and I, this is bringing this whole conversation full circle, went to drama camp together. So Jared starts making music with Ivano. I put out my first project, the Don't Talk to Me About Love mixtape, that had, like, there was a Kehlani like remix on there that I did where I just like took her beat off YouTube and reinterpreted it because I just thought it would be cool. You know, like, it had all these little kind of things on it. And Jared, so Ivano was like, I'm trying to get it exactly right. Jared heard my mixtape through, like, Jared knew Jazz. They went to church together growing up. So, like, Jared kind of knew about me through that. He found my music and he showed it to Ivano, who was like, dude, I went to camp with that kid. So they're like, what the fuck? So Jared sends the tape to Austin, and Austin was like, wow, this has like a lot of potential. Like, there's some like really strong songwriting on here. So Austin and Brian, who has also been my manager for like 4 years, they threw a show. I think it was in May or June, and it would have been like 2016 or 17, somewhere in there. I don't remember exactly when it was because it's such a weird like time to think about. But the show is called 10 Piece. They like made a bunch of wings. Like, you know, you bought a ticket, you got a plate of wings. Like, it was at Rowdy Dowdy, which I don't know if you ever went to a show there, but it was this old T-shirt factory that was turned into a venue. It was super cool. We had a lot of like DIY shows and stuff there. So at this particular show, I was like the first act. It was like technically my first ever performance. Like, I performed in high school through like Afton shows, which sucks. Never use Afton. But I met Jay Newton at an Afton show. So, well, you know, there are upsides, but yeah. So I did this show, and the other acts on the bill were like Rob Olu, Benny was there, Jazz performed.
All friends of the show.
Yeah, Danger Incorporated was there, Superbody, all these Atlanta people, like in one place. It was the first sort of scene event that I was like really at, and I was like, fuck, this is crazy. And we all met there, and like Jared and I had a really long conversation because he was planning this crazy concept album with Ivano. And he was telling me like, everybody's gonna have their own character, and I want you to like play a character within the concept, and like I'll write your parts and stuff. And I was like, I'm in, dude, you know? So it was probably a few months later that Austin actually approached me about managing me. And so through that, we just started this cycle of, I would go over to Austin's place. It would be me, Austin, Brian, and Jared. And I would work on stuff. Jared would work on stuff. We would compare notes. We would like play each other's stuff we were working on. Jared would like make me reference tracks. That's how like 90 Days came to be. Jared, like, I had this beat that I was like, I like this, but I don't really know what to write to it. And he wrote that whole arrangement of the chorus and sent it to me. And then I was like, my God, like, would you sing it just like that? And then I'll write a verse. And he was like, you really want me to sing on it? And I was like, hell yeah, I want you to sing on it. Like, you wrote it. You're amazing. And he was like, all right, bro, you know, like, I'll do it. And I don't know. It's very kind of hard to explain. I think Jared and I both identified something in each other that we really like. I'm trying to think of the proper phrasing, but it's like, I always saw him as this, just like, he was so smart, like knew so much about music. I would talk to him, you know, he would have like an hour and a half long conversation with you about the Jackson 5, you know, or whatever it was. He was very, very into music. And he was very experimental, and his songwriting was really experimental. And I think at where I was at in my career, it wasn't jealousy, but it was like, I looked up to that kind of level of like just willingness to be like, I'm gonna sing like this on this song, you know. Or he would sing a song and cry while he was singing, and it would just be insane, you know. And I think in me, he saw like kind of the backpack rapper, like, we both saw things in each other that I think we aspired to, and even if we didn't necessarily see it for ourselves, like that this is what I can become or whatever. But like, you know, when we started hanging out more frequently, Jared started writing like raps, and he would like be like, okay, I'm gonna rap on this. And he was never really a rapper. And alternatively, I started singing. And so it was just like, it felt to me like such an obvious pair that I never would have thought of. And we made 90 Days together. He did ad libs on the original version of Champion, which never came out for like a few different reasons, but someday we might put that out. But we really didn't make very much music together, which I think is something I really regret. But it's not like we had a bunch of opportunities we just didn't take, you know. It's just the kind of thing where you think you're going to be collaborating with this person for years and years and years. So, you know, it was just kind of like one of those crazy things. And that's why the Blue Don't Make Me Cry album exists, and like exists in the way that it does. Is, you know, I wouldn't have met Austin or, you know, Brian if it weren't for Jared. Jared wouldn't have known about me or like thought to reach out to me if not for Ivano. And then all those people worked on this album. You know, Malik and Ivano and Jared were good friends. Malik and Jared had a relationship outside of our friend group, and it was very important that he be in the room too. You know, like Ian Pope, who played the guitar on Backseat, performed with Jared a ton, you know, and they would write songs together and stuff. And Ben Searles, who like does my videos, and like, you know, one of my closest collaborators also was someone who did a lot of work with Jared and took photos of Jared and all this stuff. So I think that's really why that album exists. When Jared passed away, we were all like in the same room after I don't know. I can't remember the timeline very clearly for obvious reasons. That time was just kind of a blur. But like Ian, Ivano, Malik, Austin, Brian, Ben, we were all like kind of in the same place for a weekend, and we were like, let's just make something really awesome. Let's make something really amazing, something we can kind of dedicate to him. And like really, it was almost like one of those things where it felt to me like it was a group of people that needed to get something off of our chests and didn't really know how to articulate it. So it puts that album in an odd space for me because I almost never listen to it. I mean, I don't listen to that much stuff after I put it out anyway, but it always feels to me like it's not just my album. I think when I set out to write it, and when I would talk to Ivano and to Malik and to Ben about it and whomever, the concept was kind of trying to personify things that I wanted to say to Jared, things that we wanted him to talk about or wanted to talk with him about, influences that we both have. I was trying to incorporate that, and make something that I felt like would have made him be like, holy shit, you made this song? Especially because he always saw me in such a like backpack kind of, he would always say like, I'm not worried about you, bro. You're going to be fine. Like I'm worried about me because nobody understands my shit. So I don't know. I don't know exactly for how many years we hung out. It felt like it went by like that. I think it was so surreal to go from that high of feeling like you've met someone who's going to be like a lifetime collaborator and tour partner and all this stuff to having to reevaluate what you want to do and what you want to be. But I always will credit Jared for encouraging me to, whether he did it intentionally or just through what he was making, he is always going to be encouraging me to try new stuff and experiment and work hard and go after things that I want, because he had a lot of fucking aspirations and lofty goals. He finished as kind of but he had written and recorded, I would say probably 95% of an album before he passed away. And he thought it was going to win a Grammy, he wanted it to win a Grammy. It's something we talked about a lot. So that's why it hasn't come out. In a lot of ways, we feel like it's kind of our responsibility to keep that music safe until the time is right. And hopefully we will also have a platform from which I can share it to as many people as possible, because it's a really crazy, beautiful, experimental album. Obviously kind of hard to listen to, probably always will be hard to listen to, but in the best way. Yeah.
Out of all of the things that that have happened since he passed, what's one of the things that you just really wish that, like, outside of the music, what's something that you wish that you could just show him as a testament to the work that he was putting in?
That's a great question. Well, I will say that a lot of times it's like when an album will come out that I'm like, this is fucking awesome. It sucks to not be able to get his perspective. I've felt that way several times. One of the biggest ones, like I thought about it so often, I would love to get his take about Jesus is King. Because that album was just such a fascinating thing that happened. And I was like, my God, he would have the funniest perspective on this. But for me personally, I think it's just like, I've had a couple of moments where I've been like, Jared would be floored by what just happened. Probably the biggest one, it's not really that big of a deal, but I don't know if I don't know. I'll just say we randomly got a call one evening that a big name in the industry like wanted to meet us that night, like pull up, we want to talk. And we had this like really intense, like fucking, it's like all the sort of jokes about like the music industry and the like evil hand or whatever. Like it was fucking wild. You know what I mean? Like we had the meeting and afterwards we were just standing outside. Like that was fucking unsettling. Like cool, but what just happened? And he would have been like, he would have really enjoyed that. I think he would have thought it was hilarious and also really cool and like intense and interesting. And I would love to get his perspective on that. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff, you know, it sucks. I remember after the only show I've ever played in New York, it's probably one of my best performances of all time, just for me personally, feeling that way because just had the band was on point. You know, I didn't have my full band with me, which was a bummer because they're really brilliant musicians, but the band that I threw together like were classically trained like jazz musicians, just because it was New York and I had some friends who knew people. My friend Cole played saxophone during the set. Like it was very polished and also pretty like emotional and like exhausting and like intense. I just remember the whole day leading up to the show, I was so hungover, and we did the show and like crushed it, and it was a crazy kind of high to be on. It was raining afterwards, and Brian and I went back to where we were staying, and we went up on the roof and we were like smoking a cigarette and like looking, of course, like the New York skyline, you know, and it's like raining a little bit. And I think we both just had this like super emotional moment of like, this is the type of shit that we want to share with Jared, you know? He has a song called Berlin off the last album that he recorded it's like pretty crazy, like house dance song. And so we try, like almost every set we play, especially if it's outside of Atlanta, we'll just play that song at the end when we're coming off stage because it just feels right, you know? And yeah, I definitely think, you know, on the roof in New York, talking to Brian, it was a very like intense emotional moment, I think, for both of us. And just, you know, we always are thinking about him. We all have his album title tattooed on ourselves. And all we can do, you know, we talk about it all the time, but like all we can do is keep working hard and keep trying to do new things and challenge ideas. And I definitely think that when you lose somebody like Jared, it's just a moment of like, well, what the fuck are you doing if you don't try at this? You know, how dare you not take this seriously? Like Jared took it so seriously. Just not to say that he didn't like have fun making music, but he was very serious about his craft, which is always going to be inspiring to me, I think.
Yeah. And I think the beautiful thing is, as long as you all stay in this lane, or as long as you all continue to live, you know, he will live through you all, through your experiences and things like that. So, you know, one of my favorite things is that, you know, you die twice. You die once when you leave your physical body, and you die once nobody says your name anymore. Yeah. So, you know, as long as you all continue to, you know, like you say, try new things and, you know, experiment, you know, through things like that, I feel that's what keeps the past alive. That's what keeps, you know, the spirit of people with us as we go on through life. Absolutely. But that's really beautiful. I think we've talked about a lot, and honestly, I'd like to have you back because you're full of information and you're full of ideas. And there's still some things I want to learn about you that we just couldn't fit into this one episode. But I'm grateful and I'm really thankful that you came out here today. One of the things I want to ask you, firstly, what do you have anything coming up in the upcoming future? I know, like we said, the current times have made things a little difficult, but in the near future, do you have any plans?
So first of all, I'll say thank you so much for having me on. This has been great. I really appreciate it. And as far as things coming up, I pretty much since quarantine started have just been making songs, writing out ideas, and we'll see what happens. I know concrete thing that's coming out. I have a single coming out. It should be in September. I don't know exactly when in September, but that's getting like mastered right now. We've got it like pretty much ready to go. It's just like, the process of putting a song out, sometimes can take a long time. I have a project I've been working on for the better part of this year. And I keep kind of like panicking and changing it. But I'm excited about it. I think it's really cool. I think it's maybe not what people are going to expect to hear from me. And I think that's exciting to me also. It's not like a death metal album, but
Dang it.
It just, it's a little bit different, and I think it shows some growth, and I'm excited about that. And other than that, I've been working on an idea for a TV show for like 3 years. I've written a pilot. I have to revise that and keep working on it. But I want to be a musician. I want to be a performer, but there's a lot of things that I want to do and a lot of things that I want to try. Always wanted to act and stuff like that. And so I would just encourage anyone who wants to do something like that and wants to try and do stuff like that, to just try to do it.
Yeah, that leads me to my final question, and it's a recurring question that I ask all of my guests here on the show. If there was somebody out there listening to this podcast and this is their introduction to Wiley from Atlanta by way of Clarkston, they can relate to some part of your story, whether it be being from Atlanta, trying to make music and failing at the beginning, losing a friend, just any part of your story that they can relate to. What advice would you give to them?
The advice I would give to them is be patient with yourself and be patient with your art, and understand that it's a cliche to say nothing happens overnight. So I'll say nothing happens like the same way for everyone. And as long as you know what you want to gain from this, what you want to accomplish, what you want to create, then you should go for it, even if you just want to fucking get famous or like do YouTube tutorials and shit. There's no time like the present. Just start doing it.
One of my favorite quotes: the best time to plant a tree is today and yesterday.
Exactly.
You love to see it. You love to see it. Well, Wiley, once again, man, thank you so much for coming out today. I don't know. Like I said, you're definitely one of the more unique sounds coming out of Atlanta. So I'm definitely looking forward to all the things that come from you. So tell the people where they can find you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Wiley from Atlanta is my full name. You can find me on anywhere that you stream music, Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, Tidal. And I've got a lot of stuff on SoundCloud too, YouTube, etc. It's Wiley ATL on Twitter and Instagram also.
All right. Thank you, Wiley, and thank you to the audience for listening. That is going to do it for this episode of the Snooze Button Special. Tune in next time where I'll have somebody sitting in Wiley's seat and I'll be annoying them with questions. Thank you and have a good one.